I'll ask you to please do an acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to say Yama Re Gomeroi, Wallabaganyani, Wungalwa, Nabo Mari, Marumara, Nale Dawan, Dilia Yanbili, Garimaris Gangal Gomeroi, Namlanginda, Winalanginda, Winangalawa. And that's the language spoken by our families and our communities here across Tamworth and across our region, making sure that we acknowledge the country that we are on, which is the land of the Gomeroi people, and that we pay respects to our elders who have cared and continue to care for this beautiful country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. And I'll ask those that wish to please stand for the council prayer delivered by Senior Pastor James Odell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Almighty God, we thank you for the provision and prosperity you have bestowed on Tamworth, its land and people. We pray that our community leaders, the councillors and staff of Tamworth Regional Council, the civic and business leaders will continue to build and strengthen our community. Let every decision and every determination be full of integrity, equity and advancement of our fair city, our region and people. In the name of our Lord Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Odell. Councillors, I'll now declare the meeting open and I'll call for apologies and leaves of absence. There are no apologies or leaves of absence, so we'll move to item 2 on the agenda. That's consultation. Councillors, tonight we have one speaker, Rory Davis, who wishes to speak on item 6.4. Rory, would you like to come to the podium, please? Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk to you about the Manila basketball courts. So I'm from Manila, and this has been a real point of interest for me throughout my time on the Tamworth Regional Youth Council. And we've had a lot of conversations about this so far. I'm under the understanding that there's the Chaffey Park Master Plan in Manila, which is, you know, this really big program that you guys have, and I understand that that's really a long-term thing and it's going to cost a lot of money. But what I wanted to bring forward today is the creation of just a smaller, you know, basketball or netball court in Manila. In Tamworth there's a lot of facilities. I know just the skate park in town has a half court, and I think that's really helpful. That's really popular. I know we've got just the new playground that the council's recently put in, and there's the cricket things as well, but they're really, you know, the crickets are really used by the older people, the cricket teams, and the playground's really for kids, you know, under 10. So there's nothing really for kids, you know, in the middle ranges, teenagers, people in high school, things like that, other than the pool. But when the pool's not open, there's nothing really for them to do. And I think it's so important to encourage sport and involvement in those kind of community activities in the smaller towns as well. I know here, obviously, you have the whole facility for the basketball, and we have 3 basketball teams from Manila Central School that come every week, travel to Tamworth. The school and the parents have made the time and money commitment to drive them. There's a bus that brings them into Tamworth and they participate in the community program that they have going on, and they love it. But there's nowhere for them to train in our town. So either they have to come to Tamworth or they can train in school, but obviously the school is locked with 6 feet tall fences, you know, any other time. So I just think it would be, you know, significant, really, really significant for our town to have, you know, some basketball facilities or something of, you know, that sort for kids to have an opportunity to play and to engage with each other and participate in this sport that they love and them and their families have made the commitment for, but the town isn't giving anything back. You know, all these families are local and pay all this money, and, you know, the school is giving all this to have them play the sport, but there's nowhere even in their town for them to feel like they have that opportunity. So, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, as we move on to item 3, I'm just going to make a note that there were some comments made after the last meeting that it's very difficult to hear in the audience, so if we can all speak up. And for those in the audience, I'd just like to let you know that when we move into our next room after Christmas sometime, hopefully not too far down the track, we will have some amplification for all of the councillors, so that will make it easier for everyone to in the gallery to be able to hear what we're saying. So Moving on to item 3, minutes from the previous meeting. Could I have somebody move their true and correct record? Move Councillor Sutherland, second to Councillor Budd. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Has anyone got any comments on this? No, sorry. We'll move from there on to item 4, disclosure of interest. Any disclosures of interest? Yes, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I have 2 conflicts of interest to declare. For item 7.9, I have previously utilised my membership of the Tamworth Greens branch to assist Hills of Gold Preservation Incorporated at their request by facilitating communication with Greens members of State Parliament. As it happens, ICAC had a booth at last week's government conference, so I was able to raise this with them directly, and I was advised in person that this is a less than significant non-pecuniary interest. As for item 11.1 in closed council, the proposed leasee is a charity that I previously had discussions with to do advocacy work for them in a formalised but volunteer capacity. Those discussions didn't go any further though, as I ran and eventually was elected to local government. As such, I believe this to be a less than significant non-pecuniary interest. And because of that, I'll be staying in the room for both of these items of business.
Thank you. Any further disclosures of interest? There being no further disclosures of interest, we'll move on to the next item, item 5, mayoral minutes. There is no mayoral minutes, so we'll move straight on to item 6, which is notices of motion. Councillors, we have 5 notices of motion tonight, so I'll start at the top, 6.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor North, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor North, do you wish to speak to that?
I do, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to thank Charles Impey for input on this. It was something I was fairly passionate about early on, because one of the big things through particularly leading up with the election campaign, was talking about 5.
You got the wrong paper. I got the wrong paper. Radio, sorry. Okay.
Keep going.
Right, I keep going, interrupting my flow. I believe we have problems with attracting and securing, keeping good staff. We have plenty of good staff in council. I've been highly impressed with what dealings with everyone we've got. So I wanted to construct something to thinking outside the square about bringing in different incentives to bring in cadetships, whether it's helping with HEX fees for university students with a priority towards local students first, all sorts of ways of helping bring council staff on board for the long term. This is a 5 or 10 year strategy. I've had wonderful input from most councillors. It's been quite heartening to see both contributions and discussions and a few questions whether it's the right thing, or we can move about doing it a different way if it's the wrong thing. I'm open to any changes. I'm pretty sure there's some amendments coming through from councillors here to make it stronger and better. So I'm very happy with what's happening there, and I think the community should be happy. It reduces barriers for. It's good to keep our development progressing in the future. It reduces barriers for developments, I think, over time, because hopefully we can speed up developments. So it's about our planning department. It's also about engineers and IT specialists, a whole range of things. It also talks about VAs, virtual assistants. It's a way of possibly getting staff quickly if we can bring a team or a system on place as early as next year. And those sorts of people can be wound down very quickly. So it's something that I'd like to commend to the council.
Thank you. Councillor Impey, as you're also a part of the notice of motion, probably outside normal procedure, I will ask you, did you want to make some comments to back up what you and your joint mover, Councillor Brendan North, made?
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and my apologies initially. I was looking at an earlier version of the...
So, point of order, Mr Mayor, the appropriate...
Have someone speak against it.
Correct.
And I know that is, and I've just stated why I'm doing it, because there's 2 councillors moved that motion. I'm giving them both the opportunity to speak to it. If the councillors wish not to go down that track, I'm happy to do it a different way.
Well, normally, Mr Mayor, you would, ask for further comments or further speakers.
I asked for someone to speak against it, Councillor Rodder, and that is the normal case. But in this case, 2 councillors moved the motion. If that's what you're going to go down that track, I'll go down that track and I'll ask, does anybody want to speak against the motion?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion.
I'm asking, does anybody want to speak against the motion?
I'll speak against it by moving an amendment. No?
Oh, you can, if you wish. Go if you like.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to that notice of motion. The amendment, I believe, well, it is as reads up on the screen. I have sent that through to council before, and if I have a seconder, I would speak to it.
I'd be happy to second that.
Would the movers of that motion, the seconder, be happy to accept that?
I'm certainly happy to accept it, Mr Mayor, because I believe it strengthens and makes it a much better motion.
Would the seconder of the motion be happy to accept that? So rather than an amendment, it's an adjustment to the motion. That is now the motion. Thanks, councillor. Anyone wish to speak against that motion? Councillor Impey, do you wish to have a comment here?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I think the planning section, as well as engineers, IT and other areas of council are critical parts of our mechanisms to ensure that our community continues to grow, prosper, flourish and move forward. As we know, during the last few months, we had an election and a lot of people talked to us about the stoppages and the lack of skills in terms of numbers of people and sufficient numbers of people working in areas such as planning and engineering. We as a council need to, I think, give our planners and our engineers and our staff within council the tools that they need to overcome some of these challenges. So I see this as being a very strategic approach in that we need to be at the front of the line. There are 4 universities, for instance, in town planning who run town planning degree programs in New South Wales. If we need to be knocking on the door of the lecturers' rooms and informing the lecturers' rooms and those lecturers that we are a city of Tamworth growing very, very well, we need to ensure that they know about us. So we need to be at the front of the line to ensure that we can attract our fair share of skilled people, but we also need to grow our own. There is currently not a school-based traineeship option available for town planners. There is a certificate for town planning qualification that exists. It would be possible for the New South Wales Government, the National Education Standards Authority, or NESA, who work on these matters, to be approached by, say, Tamworth Regional Council for a planning certificate for qualification to be gazetted as a school-based traineeship, so that we can then attract young people in schools to become town planners before they leave school and then move into council as a full-time employee after they leave school to help in our succession planning. So there are a number of avenues that we probably haven't utilised yet, and if us as a team of 9 councillors can give our divisions within council who particularly require skilled people the tools and the opportunities to go down those paths, I think we should be working together on that.
Thank you, Councillor Impey. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, and I think this is just a minor issue. This is, it'd be fair to say this is very operational, this notice of motion. Is that correct? Would you agree with that, Mr Mayor?
In some sense it would be, but in real terms, we've got a notice of motion here that will then become a policy of this council if this is what we're going to do. So we're forming a policy, I believe, here. So it's not operational.
Not operational, righto. Look, I certainly support it because I don't think we've actually got an issue with lack of engineers. I think it's the planning department that needs the support, and as it's largely been spoken about. But I think the concern I have is where there is no financial implications in this in notice of motion, and that would be possibly significant. And in light of our annual report mentions the expenses of wages and salaries $59,942,000. Fringe benefits tax, $1,925,000. They're quite significant expenses. And then I guess what we're saying is that this is going to be a policy that will have dollars, will need dollars connected to it. And that's a big question mark.
Councillor Roddy, you're not wrong. This motion calls to investigate strategically targeted approaches to this, which means we have to develop a policy. I read the motion right through and I see that we're also at the base there requesting of a report to update councils on what actions we can take to put this in place. And I would suggest that that report that develops a policy around this, a policy framework around this, that it will have any cost implications mentioned in that report with the financial implications. I think that's how it would come to us in the next, I guess, the next report that we're actually asking for in this notice of motion.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a couple more points. I just wonder sometimes whether we should be approaching the private sector and whether this could be incorporated within this motion. The private sector in the planning areas to determine whether potentially council could determine some of their applications and they could determine some of ours as a way of reducing the backlogs. And finally, the New South Wales Government has announced the proposed Housing Delivery Authority. Is that likely to impact approvals of DAs into the future with local government?
First of all, Councillor Rodder, we do have quite a number of contractors out of the private sector doing stuff for us at the moment, so we are working in that space, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to engage more into the future as we need it. But the second part of your question, I might ask the Director if she'd like to make a comment.
Through you, Mr Mayor, with the new Housing Delivery Authority, it is focusing initially on rezonings, if I can say that, at that part of the process. So that's not going to affect our timing or delivery of DAs. It then goes on to talk about also managing developments, so the development application process. So that certainly could have an impact on the number of DAs we have if the government determines that there are appropriate sites within the Tamworth region, and that's yet to be seen. I'm not certain how many sites they would actually find or the developers would raise within the Tamworth region. That would fit with the requirements of this proposal that the government has brought forward. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you. Councillor Rodder, probably just to add to that, in a nutshell, we don't know what that's going to be. There's a lot of opposition to what the government are proposing in terms of trying to take some of those planning powers away from us and change the way we do stuff. But really, I think it'd be a very difficult question for us as a council or the staff to answer at this point in time when we don't actually know what it's really going to look like until they start implementing it. And if they start implementing it in the way they're saying, without some, and I think there will be probably some revision of what they've first stated, as there normally is, then we'll have a better idea on what those impacts might be on our staff time, and what it's going to mean for this council.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One final thing, I do support the sentiment of the motion.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors?
Mr Mayor, if I can make a comment, and this is the exact reason why I put forward the changes to the notice of motion is because to really steer this conversation away from operational matters around staffing to really trying to centre it back into how we can better adapt a workforce management plan that can provide the leadership to give staff the tools that we need to thrive as an organisation. It is our duty as councillors to look at the rules, the resources and the relationships of the organisation. And for this really is looking at the rules of how do we operate as an organisation in regards to managing our workforce. And is there a way that we can change our strategy to make sure that we can accommodate the growing needs of a council? And I think, and I congratulate Councillor North and Councillor Hooper for putting forward this to try to say that can we add some more tools into the bag of the way that our workforce management plan operates. And the third point, making sure that the findings of those conversations can be integrated back into our workforce management plan moving forward. I know it's up for renewal in the next 18 months-ish, but being able to look at, rather waiting for that time to happen to make those changes, to say that if there's any feasibility in moving those forward, then Councillor Otto, I think that we'll be looking at how is that resource in regards to an incentivised program. But I imagine that will come back to council once those conversations are had. Thank you.
Councillor Sutherland, that's a plan. It's to investigate a strategy and a policy development to build on that plan, and I think that's what this is all about. And we will receive a report in the new year, and we will be able to move that forward. Further comments, councillors?
Move with the motion, Mr Mayor.
Move the motion you put, seconded.
That was going to
Got a
make
motion.
further comment. No.
Second the motion you put.
I'll second it.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That's, remember, we've now a division. Everybody has to put their hand up for every vote we have. So, is that a unanimous decision that we put the motion? Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous again. Those against? There's none, of course. So we'll move on to section 62. Notice a motion from Councillor Mark Rodder. Questions with notice. Councillor Rodder, do you want to move those questions?
I'll move those questions, Mr Mayor.
Somebody like to second that?
I'll second.
Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Rodder, do you wish to speak to that?
Just probably a few questions. First of all, in response to the answers, we don't seem to have any information pertaining to the immediate past year of 2023-24 in the annexure attached in annexures. It mentions 2022-23 and not the immediate last year. Why is that? And secondly, we can assume that the responses in red commenced from 1st of July this year, and therefore by the end of this financial year, would we assume that SR law notices could be far higher than previous years because we're basically near the end of November, and so we've had all of July, August, September, October, and now almost all of November, and the comments about demand, soft letters or demand letters, I would assume was only from 1 July this year to the present day.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can try to make comment on that. Obviously, this was collated by our rates department. I believe in relation to your first question, it did relate to since the introduction on 1st of July, to get that information, the rates department has gone back a previous year to have a comparison for you, but and then the items in red year to date. So that might be, you didn't ask for every single year, you just asked since then. I believe they've just given you 22-23 as a comparison because that is the year that they have the most recent, collated data on. They would have to go back through for last year because they've only just finished the financial statements for those as well. And it's probably too soon to tell between when those are ongoing from last year to this year.
Further comments, councillor?
Just make a comment in relation to that. It does seem to stipulate that they are similar periods. The council issued 2,234 overdue letters up till September 24 compared to 2,500 to December in 22. So it's actually a longer period for December, but I just thought they're similar periods.
Comments, councillors?
Just to finish, Mr Mayor, on my original comments, the impetus behind the questions is that a number of ratepayers had reached out to me to complain that they feel that SR Law staff are rude and unaccommodating, and residents that had repayment plans in place were contacted to be advised that they had to dramatically increase their repayments following the 18.5% rate increase on 1 July. One resident suffering from cancer, unable to work with a 50-50 chance of survival and about to face a surgeon, was told bad luck when SR Law added additional collection fees. And I just wonder, why do we continue to use the metropolitan law firm with precious little empathy for the plight of our residents during this cost of living crisis.
Councillor Rodder, I'll just answer part of that question, that is we use an out-of-town law firm because the in-town law firms wouldn't want to get involved in doing this. It's just most councils across the state of New South Wales do the same thing. The other question is, if there's people that are really struggling, do they write to us? Do they write to you? Do you come to us with those letters, or do you circulate them? If you get responses or letters from community that feeling that they're really hard done by, I'd really like to know about it, and then we can follow that through a bit more formally, and I please ask that you do that. Further comments, councillors? The councillors, we've got this as questions of notice, and it's really to be received and noted. So could I ask that we receive and noted this report, if Councillor Rodder's happy? All those in favour, say aye and put your hand up.
Aye.
Those against, carried unanimously. Councillors, will now move on to item 6.3, notice of motion from Councillor Stephen Mears. Do you want to stand up and move that, Councillor Mears?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to move this motion.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Rodder.
Yeah, just briefly, Mr Mayor, and I'll probably close it off at the end. It's come about by multiple conversations with a lot of residents in regard to the rate increase, and a good chance the main reason for this was to get it on the table, and I think Councillor Sutherland may have some amendments, so that we as a group can sit around the table and discuss the possibility of, well, not the possibility, but look at the rate increase, the next one coming at 15%, and make an educated look at the implications for residents and or the council.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Any further comments on the recommendation? Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move some amendments to Councillor Mears' proposed notice of motion. As written on the screen. And that be that...
You move that as an amendment. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Sharpen, you may speak to that now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the notice of motion, for me, probably takes Councillor Mears' as original wording a little bit further, rather than looking for a review of the process, but request that councillors receive a detailed workshop on a comprehensive update on the SRV process to date, talking about its implementation, the rationale and where that's at, also identifying the potential impacts of deferring when spreading out the SRV over multiple years, discussing, what that impact looks like in regards to council, but also in regards to impact on community services, and following on Councillor Mears' concern around outlining how land valuations in 2025 will impact on ratepayers.
So we've got a mover and a seconder for that amendment. Now we're talking to the amendment at the moment. Anyone wish to speak against that amendment? Further comments on that amendment? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I certainly supported the original, the intent of the original motion by Councillor Mears. It is, and for asking the question whether we spread the burden over a longer period, I believe that, on the 25th of June this year, we were advised that that wasn't possible, when communication for my part has suggested that it can occur under Section 511 of the Local Government Act. We're all aware of the impact of the recent rate increase and the impact on people's family budgets, businesses, industry, pensioners, farmers. And I think that during the local government election, people, there was a number of us that did campaign on trying to seek a better deal for the residents of our region, and I think that people were expecting us to show that leadership and have another look and see what the impacts are. I notice there is a mention in relation to dot point 3, discuss options for moving forward and how they will affect council's finances. It's sort of actually explained by the General Manager's response a bit, but what that doesn't mention is what is the impact on the ratepayers for not doing it. And if we're going to, when there's a mention of that being drawn out over a longer period of time, this is a permanent special rate variation. It's not for 2 years. So I think we need to know what is the impact to residents as well, as we can see there what the possible loss of income could be to council. But I just think we need to be mindful of what is the impact to our residents that have to pay this, and not over 2 years, but a lot longer. So, in conclusion, I certainly support the intent of the original motion and Councillor Sutherland's amendment. People are doing it tough in terms of food, fuel, electricity, loan repayments and rates. So I commend the motion.
Further comments, Councillor?
I'm going to be the ugly duckling in the room, I think, and speak against the motion and the amendment, purely because I don't believe in the motion generally, because for a whole range of reasons. Our economy in Tamworth at the moment is booming. Inflation across the nation is 3.5%. The cost of living crisis is, well, we're struggling to mention it. I'll give you some simple examples. I've got first-hand knowledge from what my business is doing. I compared 12 of our really good customers, 12 customers, cafes, restaurants, pubs, so on, last year November to this year November. All of them up between 18 and 33%. People are going out, people are spending. They have the spare cash. Some people are doing it tough. They can apply to council to put their rates off, or a payment plan. Pensioners that are doing tough can get any concessions on this. So generally they got it pretty good. The rate increase, I can tell you what it'll be this year. It's a Freddo frog for mum and for dad each week of the year. $1.25 is what we're looking to postpone, 7.5%. It's a Freddo frog. Cup of coffee maybe for a month. Or we can elect to keep going through it, knuckle down, do the right thing for the area, and instead we could use that 7.5% to seal 90 kilometres of road every year. We had a wonderful presentation from the roads, the engineers and all the roads people last week, outlining what it means. $4 million in one hit. The numbers are there. To me, the last council, although a lot of people are very unhappy with it, with the decisions they made on the SRV, were bold enough to do it. They had the courage. It's a shame to wash that away now. Their other result may be 5-7 years. Let's go for another 20% SRV. This secures our future, particularly with regard to road maintenance. That's what most of it's for. We desperately need it. The roads, we need to get on top of it. Otherwise, all we're doing is stealing from our future generations. They will have to pay the cost. And as I said, it's $1.25 for mum, $1.25 for dad per week. That puts it in perspective. Conversely, interest rates have gone up. What's that per week? In the last 2 years, so $250 a week. So we're talking about $2.50 a week for the average ratepayer. I think we need to consider that.
Further comments, councillors?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll make some comments, I guess, bolstering what Councillor Ruther said. Later on in this meeting, we'll be asked to resolve that Councillor Ruther IPAR to express our concerns about proposed raw water increases. One of those concerns raised in the report is the belief that Water New South Wales has not considered the capacity of end water customers to pay increased prices. If we're going to rightfully call this out, we need to take it into consideration when we issue our own charges.
Further comments, councillors?
I'll just rebut that, given that's... Sorry.
Further comments, councillors? If you speak, you'll close the vote.
Anyone else want to speak?
Right, close the debate.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look,
You should get rid of it.
what we have in front of us tonight is not a cancellation of the special rate variation. As a new councillor, for this, obviously this previous to the previous term, I feel the pain of the community. I'm not exactly the wealthiest person around. I have a mortgage that will take me another 25 years to pay off after starting life financially again about 6 years ago. So I can feel for the person who does it tough. But I think what we have in front of us tonight is not a cancellation of a special rate variation.
Impey, I'm hearing talking down the back. I made a statement at the beginning of this meeting that I would clear the chamber if there's talking within the chamber. That's the last warning. Thank you, Councillor.
It is an opportunity for us as nine councillors to, and particularly those who are new, to be even better informed on everything to do with what a special rate variation might do or won't do, should do, can't do. And I think from my own personal perspective as a councillor, I think I need to know a lot more about what it all means, both for our residents and also for businesses and for our council to continue to move forward. So I'll support the motion.
The amendment.
Oh, the amendment, sorry. The amended motion.
Further comments, councillors?
No, you're right.
Close the debate. Oh, you want to speak, Councillor Mears?
No, I want to speak once this amendment.
You can speak on the amendment.
No, I'm fine with this amendment, yeah.
Councillor Sutherland, if you want to speak.
Thank you. Just to close the debate, the purpose of the amendment was to, as Councillor Impey has said, to request a workshop to make sure that all councillors are aware of the full picture with all of the details, with a presentation put forward by staff, which I imagine would have been planned in the calendar at some stage. This is just saying that, we request that sooner rather than later. In no way is the purpose of this amendment an intent to make a decision on whether or not to move forward in any kind of financial decision for our budget for next year. It's really just making sure that councillors have access to up-to-date and correct information put forward by our staff as experts.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. That closes the debate. I'll ask all those councillors who are supporting the amendment to raise their hands. So, Councillor, those against? Councillor North. Have you got that recorded? The amendment now becomes a motion. Further comments before Councillor Top?
If I speak, we close the debate, don't we?
No, you don't. Your motion is no longer in existence. It's the amendment.
Okay.
I'll now put the amendment all over.
Make a comment?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I thank my fellow councillors, Councillor Sutherland, for the amendments. And as stated, it's in relation to bring councillors up to speed on where we were and how we got to the SRV. Because I still believe that much of the information that we had at the time, and I can go through it if you like, was misinformation. We were actually told during the process that it could only be a 2-year process, or SRV. That was totally incorrect, and I've checked that with IPART. We were told that we couldn't apply for 3 years at the time we passed the motion to take it to IPART, or after that as well. That was totally incorrect, as according to section 511 of the Act. And we're told the second tranche after all of that.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Point of order just in relation to, is Councillor Mears accusing council of levels of wrongdoing in regards to the process here? Because I believe these are pretty strong allegations to be putting forward in relation to that.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. I'll take the point of order. We won't go down that track anymore, because I will say that the application we made was from 2 years, and that was the application we made, so we'll stick to that.
Yes, and when I asked about it at the time, before we sent it to IPART, and it's in the minutes, or it should be in the minutes, it's certainly in the video, we were told it could not be done more than a 2-year period, which was actually incorrect.
we were advised, councillors, is that we were to do 2 years. Those councillors went to 3, most of them only got 2. But Councillor Mears will call that, you can speak, but not about what happened in the past, about where you want to go in the future.
Okay, so these issues I'll table in the discussions, because I'm still waiting on some advice from my part in relation to what I've been saying.
Thanks, Councillor Mears. Further comments, councillors?
Just a quick comment. I do want to acknowledge the good, Mr Mayor, that has come from the last rate increase, having a very informative workshop on the roads. It's interesting that people in the public will say that they're seeing roads that don't need doing be done. However, I'm an avionics engineer, so I can speak to you about how to fix the gyro in an artificial horizon, but I cannot tell you how to fix a road. That's what the professionals are for, and they know what they're doing. However, but I do believe by spreading the next rate variation over a couple of years, we'll balance our financial responsibilities with compassion for the people that we do represent.
Further comments, councillors? I'll put the motion, or the amendment, which is now the motion, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Hands up. Those against? Councillor Moore. Okay, that motion is carried. And we'll move on to item 6.4, Councillor Sutherland. We'll move that.
Yes, please.
Seconded.
This.
Yes, please.
Seconded. Councillor Rimpey, Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, certainly, Mr Mayor. This notice of motion has been driven by the voice of the Youth Council and led by Rory Davis, who is the Youth Mayor, who we heard from in the community consultation. The need for recreational spaces and connectivity within young people has been championed in our Youth Strategic Plan and our Youth Action Plan, which was adopted around 12 months ago. The Youth Council have identified within an existing strategy, which is the Chaffey Park Master Plan, identified project of a basketball court, and through conversations that they've had, the Youth Council has spoken recently with State Member Kevin Anderson around trying to champion the need to try to attract some money for projects to happen. This notice of motion is recognising, that project as an existing project within a master plan supported by the youth strategy, and asking that it be seen as a priority. As a council, I think that we have a responsibility to look across all of the projects that we have and to see and help to direct staff on what is seen as a priority within the community. The young people of Manila are crying out for something to do, not only after school, but to support them in their basketball/netball endeavours. They have a really competitive team that travels into town often to compete, and are limited by the level of infrastructure. Hopefully, if this notice of motion is accepted, it really gives a bit of weight to council staff approaching external funding sources to be able to attract, whether it be through government or philanthropic or whatever that might be through sponsorship, to be able to cover the cost for that level of community infrastructure that young people are crying out for. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation in that notice of motion? Further comments on it? Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I absolutely support this motion. Not only does Manila have a long track record of producing talented sports people, but the town also has a history of youth empowerment. And the Youth Council is a formal committee of council. It's all well and good for us to pat ourselves on the back for having an active youth council, which I know we received praise for from other councils at last week's local government conference. But it's pretty hollow. We're not actively both seeking and taking feedback from them about issues and opinions of young people in our community. What's being asked here, as Councillor Sutherland said, isn't the forging of some ambitious new policy or infrastructure commitment. It's just for a project already identified and adopted by council to be given a higher priority based on identified community benefit. And I think that's something we should consider and support.
Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll ditto what has already been said by Councillor Brooks and Councillor Sutherland. My stepson plays basketball, and I have watched him play basketball against the likes of Manila. And they are a tough team. They play it hard, they play it strong. I might add that if a basketball court was built in Manila, well, they may just win a few more games in Tamworth as well, and it might be a harder game when my stepson comes up against the Manila team. Now, we've seen how half-court basketball courts are so successful and so popular in Tamworth already. We have one at the skate park. There is another much older one over in South Tamworth, in one of the parks there. I can't remember the name of the park, I'm sorry. There's one at Hyman, there's another one, yes, two in South Tamworth then. And they are popular spots for young people to exercise and to utilise. I think it's only reasonable. We have a council, we have a budget, and I'd like to see a project such as this prioritised. We might see a few more of those older cricketers venturing over to play basketball. We probably need a few older cricketers playing in our national cricket team at the moment too. But I'd love to see a project like this come to fruition sooner rather than later, and I support every effort to make sure that this project comes to fruition, both for young people and, as has been mentioned as well, Miss Rory Davis is our, or has been our youth councillor mayor, and they do a fantastic job as a youth council, and they have a lot of knowledge that they share with us, and we need to support that knowledge.
Thank you, Councillor Barr.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Firstly, can I commend Rory tonight? Great presentation. It takes a bit to get up and speak in front of council and in groups of people. You're a champion for the people of Manila, and you spoke on behalf of your youth out there. Councillors, what I say to you is this, is we consult our community so that we can get feedback. We've got a great youth council. The youth mayor has come forward and said, we need this in Manila, we need this facility. I think we often get a little bit blasé with the facilities we have in our bigger centres. I think it is absolutely imperative that we do something to get this moving in Manila post-haste. I commend the motion, and you should be proud of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Member. A question, I think, and again, as Councillor Butter said, congratulations. Thank you, Rory. Great effort to get up and speak in front of us all. As you know, we were out at Manila on Saturday for a councillor catch-up, and after that I went out to Chaffey Park to witness the Nundle, or part there of the Nundle Manila cricket game. They were playing for Pink Ribbon, I think it was, and they raised $2,500. Whilst I was there watching the game and mingling with the residents there, they did have some concerns that, depending on the layout of the basketball courts, that there's a concern they may have to then relocate their cricket field, and that was something that was a bit, I suppose, a bit of an issue for them. But certainly commend this motion and everything we can do in regional towns to get kids active and playing sport, and backing up the youth council, I think, is a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 6.5. Councillor Brooke.
I'd like to move the motion.
We get a seconder, Councillor Rodder.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think it's fair to say I'm the biggest supporter of renewable energy at this table. I'd love to be proved wrong on that claim, but I'm consistently on record as saying that I want our region to embrace the international trend of shifting to renewables and reap the enormous economic benefits that will bring us. That being said, I've also have a consistent position of thinking that this project doesn't stack up. As a council, we have repeatedly lodged multiple submissions detailing the project's inadequacies with respect to site suitability constraints, the developer's failure to achieve a social licence within a Nundle community. But relevant to the EPBC assessment, council has also consistently questioned the constructability of the project and its impact on surrounding significantly important biodiverse environment. Writing to Minister Plibersek and the Department, this one's a tongue twister, of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, is an action with very little associated costs, but has potential to significantly bolster the argument against the project during the project's federal EPBC assessment. So I would recommend council support the motion.
I did make a statement. I gave a warning. I'm going to call for someone to move for a suspension of the meeting. Move Councillor Rudd. I need a seconder. Councillor Fabian. Councillors, I'm going to ask, would you allow me to suspend the meeting for 10 minutes? Hands up, those who will support it. Councillors, those against? 6-3. Councillors, the meeting is now suspended for 10 metres.
Do we get to speak for or against?
You don't. And I'm sorry to the people in the gallery that have been well behaved, but we did make that warning. And Byron, I'm going to ask you to clear the chamber, please.
Everyone for one person. Everyone.
I made a very strong point. Now I'm lost up to where we up to. We're still on your motion.
6.5.
On my motion, I moved the second by Rother, sorry.
Councillor Ryder, and do we have anyone wishing to speak against? Pardon?
Who'd like to come back in?
No, they're gone. Yes, councillor.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just a question more for the director on what implications or whether this would have any real effect by writing to the minister.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Director?
Sorry, through you, Mr Minister.
Yeah.
It's a bit unknown whether it will help or not, but it sends a message about council's concerns about this development. You know, it's the first time I can ever think, I remember where we've ever written to the Federal Environment Minister. not in my time anyway, so I think it's certainly saying how important we think it is, and we're supporting the community of Nundle in its opposition. I know the Preservation Society's been invited to make a submission as well, so it goes to support their the submission that they're making. So I don't see any negative outcomes from it, but whether it actually makes a difference, yet to see.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd support this motion.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Lindsay.
Mayor, look, I support the motion too, and I don't think this requires any type of amendment, but I think if council writes to the minister, I think we all ought to be signing the letter, not just the general manager or the mayor, but all councillors. It gives it even more impetus, more meaning, because we all represent our community together, not just the mayor or the general manager. We all work together. So I just, that was my point I wanted to raise.
Councillor Lindsay, we can do that. That's probably a little bit out of the norm, but we can do that. But really, if a council determines that they're going to write to the Prime Minister, normally that letter is written to the Minister with the full knowledge that the council is supporting that letter going to the Minister, signed off by the Mayor or Deputy Mayor, whoever it might be.
I mean, we've heard from the Director writing the letter to the Minister. He's already out of the norm. Let's make it even more powerful, I think.
Okay, councillors, further comments?
Mr Mayor, if I could, I wonder if we should consider an amendment to include the State Minister for Environment and Climate Change, etc. Because it is a state significant project, and I understand the federal support's behind it. But I wonder if the mover would accept an amendment to include the State Minister for these issues as well.
I'd be happy to accept the amendment to that. The rationale was that the EPBC assessment at that point is at the federal level, but there isn't any. I can't see any harm with it. We're also sending it to the state minister. Yeah.
Director, do you have any comments on that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the only thing I'd agree with Councillor Brooke that the state has already approved the project, so it's it's had an environmental approval.
Withdraw the amendment.
Further comments, councillors? We're speaking to the amendment. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just quickly, it is disappointing that the project was approved, still with so many question marks, especially the fact that the project has no social licence, and I believe that anything that we can do to thwart this project, I certainly will support.
Further comments, councillors?
Rather reply.
There's nobody spoken against it, so you can't.
Okay, fair. I'll talk to you later, mate.
Councillors, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, hands up and say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Those against, carried. So we move out of notice of motions on to council reports, and we go to 7.1, sewage management. Can I have a move in a second, please? Councillor Bart, second to Councillor Impey. Councillor Bart, you speak to that? Speak against that?
Just a question on it. Mr Mayor, I read through a lot of it and got lost, but does it apply to existing people who own properties that they'll have to be tested every 10 years depending on their locations, or are they only for purchasing and new systems?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, it would apply to when you already have a system, and that already happens now. There's an inspection regime.
Yep.
This will mean the inspection regime will potentially be less robust because it will be based on where you're located. Are you on the edge of the creek or you're not? It's actually going to be better for a lot of people, I think. But of course, it's also for new development. So both.
Thank you. A question?
It does, thank you.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Comment and a question. One is that I love how this this strategy looks to safeguard sensitive environments and water sources from contamination, especially in spaces that rely on bore water. Question I had was just being aware that we're moving into a Christmas period and having documents going out on public exhibition throughout that could possibly impede on people's level of participation who might not want to finish Christmas lunch and jump on. What are we doing just to make sure that community have adequate time and capability of providing levels of engagement?
Councillor Sutherland, we've given them 56 days. So, did you make comments?
Through you, Mr Mayor, you're correct. So normally we would advertise for 28 days, and in this case we have doubled it. And we generally, with any planning related documents, at Christmas we always go right through the Christmas period and right to the end of January, so we can catch those people either that go away just before Christmas or just after, so that they have an occasion to make submissions.
Further comments, councillors? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye with their hands in the air.
Aye.
Unanimously carried. 7.2.
Seconded.
Moved councillor Rodder, seconded councillor Mears. Councillor Rodder, you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, another excellent recommendation. Obviously, coming on the back of Councillor Brooks' notice of motion. And I know that certainly some of the people that were in the gallery would be very supportive of this, to join their efforts to defeat that proposal in the Land and Environment Court. Obviously it's going to be tough given the decision of the IPC, but I believe, and I have from the start, that council's responses and objections were sound, and not only my opinion, it's the opinion of a number of people in other government departments I've spoken to about it. They think it was also a sound objection and should have carried a lot more weight than it did when the decision was made. So certainly support this and hope that it actually delivers the outcome that our community is asking for and that we need.
Anyone wish to speak against? I think so. Before we ask anyone else to speak or make comment, I'll ask Gina and I'll ask the councillors, did you all read your latest email on the illegal findings?
I haven't yet.
The one sent today.
The one from earlier, was there much difference between the one that was in the annexures?
Through Mr Mayor, no.
Pretty much
Sorry,
the same.
for you.
Pretty much, yeah,
Okay.
pretty much the same. The legal stuff was the same. But I just wondered if anyone had read it, because all it does is actually shore up this recommendation. Further comments, councillors? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Hands up. Those against, carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move on to, and we move straight into item 8.1. Could I have a move in the seconder, please? Move councillor Sutherland, seconded councillor Mears. You wish to speak to that, councillor Sutherland?
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, and say that, this is a great use of council resources that are no longer required for services and going to give maximum community benefit. I think the Oxley Dog Training Club are going to make life a lot easier, having a right on their disposal, and that'll become the owner's property of theirs and the ownership of theirs outright. So I think this is a really good recommendation and I do support it.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Any further comments on the recommendation? Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I love these types of items on an agenda because it's positive. And in a world today when there's so much negativity, council being able to support a community group who provides a fantastic service for all of the community can only be a good thing. And I think as a council, we should be heralding this and ensuring that whenever possible, we support these types of recommendations and requests in the future, where we can.
Further comments, councillors? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move on to item 8.2. I will move in the seconder. Move councillor Rodder, seconded councillor Sutherland. Councillor Rodder, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a despicable proposal by the Water New South Wales and Water Administration Ministerial Corporation. to dramatically increase water charges in our region and likely to make them some of the highest in the state of New South Wales, if not Australia. On top of the rate increase and other cost of living pressures, this will further harm the budgets of families and impact businesses, pensioners, farmers and industry around our region. Sadly, we didn't matter when our local MP was Water Minister, which I believe was a wasted opportunity to make positive changes in this space. And we certainly don't matter now to the current state government. This is occurring under a corporatised management model. Imagine if a government of the future privatised our water assets as a former government privatised our electricity infrastructure. If IPART approves this increase, it should be on the basis that when we get to the next drought, the government guarantees our supply and the plug is simply not pulled from the local dams, Chaffey, Split Rock and Keep It for vested interests and customers elsewhere. Water, as we are probably all aware, water management represents our region's greatest challenge to ever growing to a population of 100,000, and I certainly support the intent of this motion and hope that we're successful.
Anyone wish to speak to this recommendation? Further comments on the recommendation?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Brooke,
I'd like to move an amendment,
you move your amendment.
which I sent through earlier.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Mears. You can speak to the amendment.
This is a pretty simple amendment. I acknowledge that we're working on a tight time frame, and that if we provide a submission to IPART, it will need to be sent before our next ordinary council meeting. However, I imagine the issue will attract significant attention from the community, and with this addition of the new proposed point 2, I think adding this item to our next meeting agenda, and in turn including our potential submission in the business paper and next year's, would be an act of goodwill by making the submission easy for residents to review. As for the proposed point 3, if our intention is to express our concerns to policymakers at a state government level in a position to influence this decision, I think it's appropriate to also forward our concerns to the opposition, the largest crossbench party and our local member.
Councillors, we've got a move and a second to that amendment. Anyone wish to speak against that amendment?
Comment through you, Mr Mayor, for the Director. Have you got any concerns or implications that could come of this?
I'll just make one comment. I had a long conversation, I say a very long conversation with the Minister yesterday, Rose Jackson. She said to me, I'd applaud your council to write to IPART. At this point in time, we have no information to deal with at all. The government is, and the Minister and her as the Minister, have nothing in front of them to consider. Write to IPART, make sure you've got a very strong submission. When those submissions go in and when the draft when the draft determination comes out, that's when you come and see me, write to me, be very strong in your conversation with me, write to me, write to the other ministers and your local member, then you come and see me and I'll welcome a posse from your council to come and sit down at the table. And she said, I understand that your water charges in the Peel Valley are currently a lot more expensive than anywhere else in the west of the Great Divide. And she said, I understand what this will mean to you and we will try and help you in whatever way we can. But writing to me now, or writing to any other ministers now, is fruitless.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That helps make my decision.
Mayor, if I may, I'm just wondering if part 3 might be omitted. I don't know that it's strategically any benefit to us, and on the back of the words of the Mayor, to write to the Minister at this point in time. They're not going to say anything until such time as the IPART review comes out. And that's the time, I think, when we must lobby and lobby hard, because what this potentially means, we talk about growth in Tamworth, we talk about the Blueprint 100, we talk about developments, we talk about industry. None of it happens without water. Nothing will grow without water. So I'd suggest that point 3, an amendment to the amendment, you might do comment on it, Mr Mayor, but if point 3 was to be taken, I don't think there's any strategic value to it. I don't think it does anything at all. What we should be doing is get the submission in and certainly have it back before council on the 10th, but in terms of sending something to the minister, as the Mayor just said, the minister's not going to talk to her or respond to it because she has no information to act upon. But I think we are facing a significant time in our region in terms of what we do with water and how water affects our future. Because quite frankly, most of these developments we keep talking about will not exist if we can't secure better water and rationalise the ridiculous waste of water through environmental releases and not using our pipeline and a whole range of stuff. So strategically, I think point 3 is pointless, but I support 1 and 2.
Thank you. I'll just take councillor.
Yeah, I take your point, Mr Mayor and Mr Deputy Mayor. I do note that my amendment to point 3 was adding to the original, to the original recommendation. So even if I was to detract the extra words I've added to point 3, the original recommendation would still have recommend writing to the New South Wales Water Minister. It might be a procedural thing, but if we moved on this amendment, I'd imagine someone could then foreshadow another amendment to remove point 3 altogether.
Councillor Brooke, if you wanted to remove item 3, that'd be we'll be voting on the amendment, and that'd be items 1 and 2. If you had yourself and the seconder were happy to remove it.
Okay, yeah. In that case, I'll move to adjust my amendment to retain point 2, but omit point 3 entirely.
Councillor, you a seconder?
Yes.
Happy with that, and I'm going to ask Mr Logan to make comment.
Mr Mayor, just a little. The councillors already have what the submission will be to IPART written in the business paper. IPART have requested answers to 25 questions, or 23 questions, and I have given council what my proposed comments will be to those questions. So, whilst I appreciate point 2 up there, you've already got the submission. It won't be any different on the 24th of February or the 10th of December or September, because that's the proposed submission. IPART at this stage don't want, they're not asking for, all of the arguments under the sun. They want specific answers. When the draft determination comes out, then it's a bit more open slather about you can say whatever you want, and indeed I would encourage the council to say whatever we want. But again, for that submission, I will present to you a draft submission that we will make, and you will resolve to lodge that submission. I'm not going to make a submission and then come back to you and you might say, that's not really what we want you to say. We'll put something in front of you. You can tell us whether that's what you want to say to IPART, and away we go.
Councillors, having had a look at that submission, it's got to be in by the 9th of December, and that's before the next meeting, and I think Mr Logan's put that forward so we can consider it. So it'll have to be sent off as a public submissions close on the 9th, so it has to be sent off before the next meeting. So that will be going out if all councillors actually taken the time to read through that and have a look at it. Are you happy with it, Councillor Riley?
I just had a question, Mr Mayor. Look, I think that maybe dot point 2 is superfluous, and that we should have kept dot point 3, given that it closes on the 9th. So essentially we're saying that probably after the 10th of December we're writing to the Water Minister, the Shadow Water Minister, and I think Greens and the local member. And I think that that probably is appropriate then, because they will obviously start to, IPART will, I assume, at some point start to issue the draft recommendations and all that publicly.
And what the Minister said to me yesterday, you need to wait until the draft determination is released, because they will take some time to put that together. When that draft is released, they'll have it, we'll all have it. And that's when we go into attack mode.
A comment and a question. Given what Bruce just said, I'd be happy to retract the amendment for point 2 as well. Although I think that would take us back to the original motion.
Yeah.
The original, suggestion with the initial point 2 added. But I also had a question. That was a mistake on my behalf. Reading the original report, I assumed that we'd be putting in a written submission. I didn't realise that the answers to those questions provided were the actual submission. But I did also note that in the report it said that at this stage it looked like there wasn't going to be a round of consultation after the draft determination. Has that changed between now and then?
No, that's what, well, Mr Logan can answer that, but that's what will be happening, and that's when it's been suggested, that's when we go and see the Minister. That's the time to do it, when they've got it all in front of them.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I'll just check that. So, the release of the draft determination is in March. Previously, and this is not in the information that's been released by IPART at the moment, but every time we've done this before, there has been public submissions on the draft determination, and whilst it's not included in when the public submissions will close or anything like that, I would be amazed if they don't. It's called public submissions. And even if they don't, we could still put in a submission anyway and write to them and do whatever we want. So, but I'm just saying to you at the moment that in the range of steps that a public submission or a public period where you can where they call for submissions is not included in IPART papers at the moment, but has been in the last 4 or 5 that I've been involved in.
So, councillors, if the recommendation was that we provide a submission to IPART, which is in our paper tonight, on the proposed prices and associated issues, then I think that's what we need to be very keen on tonight, getting that out, getting it pushed to IPART, getting it out there, and then in the fullness of time, when the time's right, after speaking with the Minister yesterday afternoon, that's when we go and that's when we see it. And we don't go alone. We'll be taking some people with us. And that might be some more councillors, and it could be some people from industry. But that'll be a decision of council previous to that visit on who they're happy for us to go down with. I'm suggesting some of the big water users, obviously Mr Logan, who will bang the drum as hard as anyone. But look, councillors, it's up to you. The motion is in your hands.
Mr Mayor, what are we actually up to in relation to where we sit with?
Well, we've got an amendment in front of us that Councillor Brooke put forward, and he's actually withdrawn 3, and if he wishes to withdraw 2, it'll be...
Yeah, I'll withdraw 2, which I believe takes us back to the original, so the original recommendation.
It's not the original.
No, it's not. It still has a right.
Okay, so let's roll it.
It is provide the submission to IPART on the proposed prices and associated issues detailed in this report. That's what the amendment is now. So, there's a second, happy with that?
Yep.
So, council, is there any further comments before?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't want to throw anything in there, but I just wanted to make a statement, I suppose. After reading the report, it seemed to me that IPART and WAMC, they've made their decisions, they've made their determinations. They're waiting on a response from the government, which will be their determination, I suppose. Does the government make a determination and change their minds on that determination very often? Because if they determine that they're happy with a 353% rise, that's...
Councillor Impey, this is how it works. The 2 government agencies put forward to IPART, as we do with rates, as all councils do with rates, we put forward to IPART a submission on what we need to cover our operating costs for the period of time that they're putting the submission for. In this case, I think it's 5 years, isn't it, Mr Logan? So they'll put forward a case, what the costs are going to be, not what they'd like, but what the costs are going to be and what they need to continue to operate into the future for the next 5 years. They put that forward to IPART. IPART will then have a look at that. They'll make a determination on that, whether they think that's reasonable or not. In most cases in the past, they have made determinations that whatever's in front of them is pretty reasonable in terms of water. That determination is, then forms a draft determination and a draft report. That draft report then goes to the government. Then the government have to make a decision on what they're going to do with that draft report. Are they going to support it? Is that going to go to cabinet? Is there going to be conversation with Treasury about how can we deal with this into the future? Are we going to meet some of those costs? Because the impact on rural and regional New South Wales is going to be dramatic. It's going to be dire, and this is probably talking a little bit about our conversation yesterday. This is the conversation that we have to have with her when that draft determination is put forward. Until then, she's got nothing to speak about, she's got nothing to work on, she's got nothing to act on. When she's got that draft determination, then they can sit around the table and they'll be meeting with us, and I can guarantee you they'll be meeting with many other councils, and I've already spoken to some people down in the Lachlan. They'll be meeting with them as well, and they'll be trying to work out at government level how much do we subsidise Water New South Wales and WAMAC, or do we just leave it as it is? They've got to make a determination then, and those determinations that they make then will be the ones that will impact on us. The IPART decision is not going to be the one that impacts on us. It's what the government decides to do.
Yeah. Mr Mayor, if I can make a comment, that's exactly right, councillors. IPART sets the maximum price that these authorities can levy. The government can change them, but they just have to decide how they're going to fund it if they change it.
So councillors,
I apologise for backtracking, but if I can just get a bit more clarity and some confirmation that there's no benefit at all in writing to the New South Wales Minister for Water.
None at all.
Okay.
Absolutely none at all. From her words, from her mouth yesterday, absolutely none at all, because she's got nothing to talk about. Nothing's in front of her.
Okay.
So we can write to her, it's just me to write her a letter. She'll receive a notice.
Keep our powder dry.
Means nothing. So councillors, where are we now? Are we prepared to vote on this recommendation, which is the amendment? The amendment that you put forward now, which is only one line. Are we prepared to vote on that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. The amendment now becomes a motion. All those in favour of voting for the motion, which is was the amendment?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move on to the next item.
Campaign.
Thanks.
Couple more of them. Keeps awake.
Where am I up to? 9.1, councillors, we've got the Tamworth Regional Annual Report. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor North, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
No.
Anyone wish to speak against that report? Any further comments on that report? Yes, Councillor Renewable.
Just a little one, just something I picked up in the annexes. Antenna leases has risen from 373,000 up to 420,000. Not a great figure, but does that mean there are more antennas on council buildings and assets, so therefore we're deriving more of income on antenna leases, Mr Mayor?
Councillor,
Mayor, I'll have a go at that if you like.
I'll ask you. Good man.
Under the lease arrangements, the income increases every year.
Yep.
So I don't know if there'll be any more, but certainly our income goes up every year.
It's a nice little bucket of money.
Councillors, anyone wish to make further comment on that report?
Just a quick comment, Mr Mayor, and that is to congratulate the staff on all their hard work and being able to deliver the outcomes that are identified in our annual report. It takes a whole organisation to make change, and sometimes, or most of the time, the staff don't get the credit they get, and they get rubbed with the reputation of the decision of councillors. So I want to make sure that tip our hat to the staff, and also just make note that when you look at the completion of outcomes and tasks, that we've got a bit of work to do, and hopefully we can continue to create some really good strategic approaches in getting those level of outcomes to rise. I know there's some delays and some actions that are outside of our control that have led to that, but getting that number, that percentage up higher and following in this year would be a great outcome for us as council. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Wright.
Question, Mr Mayor, just so I noticed in the annexures it refers to the total figure for wages and salaries, and then it does mention the GM's remuneration and senior staff. Is that included, or is that over and above? Is that included in the total wages or salaries, or?
Councillor Rodd, I can't answer that. I'll take that on notice.
I'll take it on notice. I believe it is included. The total salaries is the total salaries, but, which includes senior staff, but I would have to double check that figure for you, Councillor.
Thank you.
My assumption would be it would be.
Mr Mayor, that's the way it's been for the last, so on.
Further comments, councillors? Put that recommendation, all in favour say aye and hands up.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move to 9.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Sutherland, second Councillor Impey. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that report?
Can I just
Further comments?
comment with regard to the size of some of these reports? A lot of work goes into it, I understand that, it's important, but the financial reports, it's disappointing that we don't have enough time given the tech glitches we had on the weekend, so I struggle to justify supporting it in a way when we, you know, I need my eyes wide open for all of this, and I've really struggled for time to get across all of it, particularly, of all things, the financial reports it's critical for what we do. I'll support it, but I have that brief little bit of objection with regard to time, and I know IT's been a bit of an issue, but we need to be really aware of these issues.
Councillor Lord, I hear exactly what you're saying, and it is a challenge for all councillors sitting around the table to actually get across all the reports, and I know you're very interested in the financial stuff, which is probably more time consuming than a lot of the others, and maybe we should have a chat offline about how that might be able to be overcome into the future. Further comments, councillors? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move to next report. 9.3, council investments. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Mears, seconder Councillor Brooke. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Mears?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any comments? Any further comments? No comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move straight to item 9.4, review of community members on council committees and working groups. Could I have a mover and a second to move Councillor Budd and Councillor Brooke? Councillor Budd, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks, Mr.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm not quite sure how to sort of approach this, but I did. It was just a last minute thought I had this afternoon, to be honest, between when I finished work at 3 o'clock or left work at 3 o'clock and when I arrived here at 4 o'clock. I just fear that we might have a situation where in some cases, in some of these committees, where we have brand new councillors coming in, if we have a situation where there's a potential for brand new community members coming in, we might have some of these committees where a lot of that knowledge is lost, and I know sometimes new knowledge is a good thing, certainly don't disagree with that, but some of the groups such as the Disability Access Working Group, the Heritage Working Group, the Arts Group, the Inclusive Culture Group, the City Centre Group and the Urban Tree Group, those groups are full of people who are community members who have an enormous amount of knowledge in those areas. They're professionals, in actual fact, in some of those areas. And if we have a situation where we have brand new councillors coming in and a lot of those good people who have served in those committees for 2 years or 4 years or longer miss out on the next round and other newbies come in, and yes, we'll have new information, but I'm a little bit concerned that we might lose a lot of knowledge. So I guess I'm proposing that that we might either hold off on new community members coming in for a further 2 years to allow for that, I guess, what was the word I used
Transition?
before? Transition, yes.
You like to stage it.
Grouping, yeah, staged. Great word, thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Limpy, can I just make a suggestion that, and you can keep the floor, that most of the people that are on those committees that add a lot of value to those committees, they're not going to go anywhere.
They'll reapply and,
They'll reapply.
Okay.
If they don't, they weren't going to anyway.
All right.
Like we get the jobs because
Okay.
they are well known, they're well respected.
Yep.
And I can't see any reason why they would be moved on.
All right.
So Councillor Impey, I understand the principle behind what you're talking about and it's quite sound, but I think it would probably, if we start regulating it too much, we're going to get ourselves into a dilemma.
Yeah.
The dilemma will be that those very good people that we've got at a point in time when their 2 years is up, will have to go.
Yep.
And I think that's dangerous.
Yep. Cool.
You have the
Yep, and I agree with, which is why I wasn't quite sure how to approach it. But I also added one more thing. Do the minutes of those meetings appear in our reports for councillors to read, for those councillors who aren't on some of those committees, so that we can be well
Yes, all those minutes are in the business paper.
Yep, okay. Righto.
Sorry.
My understanding is to we had agreed, the
Yeah.
previous council had agreed, only when there is a recommendation to council for an action. If there are
Yeah, when there's
minutes-
recommendations for action, but if councillors around the table wish, then we can make that happen.
Can we put them on?
Yeah, maybe we could put them on the portal rather than having
Put them on the
action.
portal.
Yep.
to the council
All those
meeting
minutes can go on the portal.
Yep.
There you go.
Otherwise, we're going to have a business paper that's like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, or
good idea. And if they could also be added to the council website for members of public who might have an interest in some of those committees, they can go in there and read the minutes as well.
we can do that.
Yeah.
With most of them, yeah.
Okay.
Let's work on the.
Yep.
Okay, you
Okay.
happy with that? Further comments, councillors?
Thank you. Yeah, just quickly, Mr Mayor, I support the motion in its current form. I think we're not actually banning anyone that's previously served on one of those committees. We certainly thank them for their service on those committees, and I'm sure that there'll be plenty of them that will actually put their hand up and re-nominate. It's just opening it up for other people to actually have that opportunity too. And you know, we've got a big community, and it can only increase the skill set on some of those committees.
Thanks, councillor Ryder. Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr Mayor, and that was, is there an understanding or an estimate of the time frame on how this kind of review is does it have the potential of holding off committee meetings until it takes shape? And do we have an idea of how long that'll be, and an idea of a lot of these community committees are great ways for us to make sure that we're either getting information to the community or community getting information to us, and if that is held off for an extended period in time, is that going to impact on our level of engagement in that space?
Some of those committees in different directorates, but I think the ones you're referring to are probably in your directorate, so if you'd like to make comment.
Again, because we've got Christmas coming up, we don't want to stop anyone from actually applying to be a community member because it's the holiday season. So the EOIs will go out quite soon. But again, certainly what I've got in mind is having them close at the end of January. So people have got that time to apply. Then we would of course bring them to the council to appoint those people. So I'm sort of thinking the first committee meetings wouldn't be till I'm thinking end of February. We could start booking times, but to be, I think, deliberated by those who might want to apply, it makes sense to have it go to the end of January. And that, I accept that's been a bit of time, but I don't want to cut out anyone who might want to apply and is away for a couple of weeks. But open to council to tell me otherwise.
You happy with that, councillor?
Yeah, it's just good to know, Mr Mayor.
Further comments, councillors? There's no further comments. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move on to 9.5. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Budget review statements. Moved councillor North, seconded councillor Mears. No, Mears. Used to speak there, councillor North?
No, thanks.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Further comments on that? Councillor Rimpey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, those who might know me would know that I was on council during the drought years and COVID years, and we saw declines in incomes across the board. Roll the clock forward about nearly 3 years. And it's really pleasing to see areas such as the pilot training facility rent increased by 18,000, sports dome, court hire, sport and recreation, the airport, entertainment venues, after-school care and art gallery, all increasing in income levels between 23 and 24. So we've certainly moved past those dark old days of COVID times, haven't we, Mr Mayor?
Yeah.
But we do know our council budgets are under pressure. We know there have been increased costs, and after reading the report, it was quite evident that we have some pressures on the budget. It costs more to do business, not just for businesses, but also for councils as well. So we ought to be, I guess, mindful of where we move in the future. Whilst we have some increased incomes, it is nice to see, but we need to be a little bit careful as we move forward. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Further comments, councillors? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move to item 9.6. Could I move in the seconder? Move Councillor Bart, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Wish to speak to that, Councillor Bart?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Further comments on 9.6? Comments? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move from there on to 9.7. Disclosure of interest. It's a receive and made. I think we've got all council. We've got all, haven't we? Could I have somebody move their recommendation? Move Councillor Budd, seconded Councillor Brook. Anyone wish to make? Councillor Budd?
I was probably the one dragging the chain, Mr Mayor, and I'm returning today.
Councillors, it's really a receive and note, unless somebody wants to say some words either for or against. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 9.8. Amendment to the ordinary council meeting schedule. Might have a move Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Sharpen. Any comments, councillors? No comments? No one? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move on to 10, community services, Tamworth Regional Gallery strategy. Could I have a move in the second to move Councillor Brook, seconded Councillor Sutherland? Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Brook?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just a quick one. I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work Bridget Guthrie and our other gallery and museum staff put into developing the strategy. The strategy is important for the continued operation of both the Tamworth Regional Gallery and our wider regional and cultural scene, as it's a requirement for grant submission to acquire funding from Create New South Wales. Our gallery space, gallery collection, the cultural tourism it attracts, and the more intangible benefits it contributes to our cultural identity and place are, I think, under-recognised assets of our council. I'm very supportive of placing this strategy on public exhibition, and I hope to see it ultimately adopted.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on that recommendation? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 10.2. Could I have a move in the seconder? Move Councillor North, seconded Councillor Budd. Wish to speak there, Councillor North?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly to it regarding the community meeting and adopting the minutes. And I'd like to speak really positively for the meeting, as well chaired by, well actually not chaired, but run to start with by Kay Delahunt from Manager Learning Communities. Well done, thank you. And it's provided a really good outlook of what the Central Northern Regional Library is doing. I think it's a great concept. It's growing, which is good news. The overall book loans were up. One of the interesting things was that time spent in front of computer devices within the libraries were up too across the region. I think it's just a great concept and we should all be supporting it. The contribution from Tamworth Council is actually going down. How's that for unusual? Not by a lot, but that's great news overall. So one of the few costs that go down. So I'd just like to commend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Further, anyone wish to speak against, or anyone wish to speak against?
Mr Mayor, just on the back, against?
Against.
No. I was too excited. Sorry.
Further comments, councillor Budd?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Today we were very lucky to be invited to the opening of the Tingle Library and hall out there. Fantastic setup. Kate and your crew, really great thing today, and it was really well accepted by community, I think, and it just shows the council's out there getting those books, those learnings out there. Fantastic. One of the highlights this morning is that magnificent artwork up on the wall, which Mark's wife had something to do with. Absolutely magnificent. It was a great presentation. Congratulations.
And you got in the photo.
Sorry, here come the photo.
Further comments, councillors? Further comments? No further comments. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move straight into item 10.3, which is proposed fees and charges for the multi-purpose centre, one that we opened today. It was a great day, and thank you ladies out the back for the work that you did to get it to where it is, and it looks fantastic. So could I have a mover and a second? I move councillor Sharp and second to councillor Budd. Councillor Sharp, any wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll speak very briefly. The community response about the fees was very positive, which is good to see for a change. And after having a walk through the facility, it's fantastic. The dance floor is unreal. The just open and very airy, and I think Katingle's going to be better off for it.
Anyone wish to speak against? Further comments? Councillor Lindsay.
Yeah, look, I'd like to applaud the previous council for the work that they did and the staff for making this happen. Because if it weren't for them, this
Probably
would be
the
happening.
previous two councils.
Yeah, towards the end of that, I think, yeah. But I won't give that council credit, I'll give the last one credit.
Further comments, councillors? Being no further comments, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll move from there to item 11, reports to be considered in closed council. I'll just ask Karen, do we have has anyone requested any matters in closed council to be heard in open?
No, Mr Mayor, no written submissions.
Councillors, could I have a motion to move into closed council? Councillor Bard, second to Councillor Sutherland. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. then we'll go back into open council.
Motion. Motion to accept.
You try too hard.
We haven't done it yet.
No.
Can I ask, Karen, are you going to report on 12.1 to 12.11?
Yep, as per the business paper, so items 12.1 to 12.11 in the closed session of council, all items were adopted as per the business paper.
Thank you. Councillors, can I have a notice to accept? Councillor Ryder, Councillor Neves, all in favour say aye.